48-hour art check, round 137.
Yes.
As soon as this thing started, I realized I was holding way too many devices in my hand. So just like, I almost wasn't able to push the button.
48-hour art check.
Oh no, I'm getting slap back. Let me
Yes.
just close it out.
Is that yours?
That was me.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we are. Should we jump in?
Let's do it.
Okay. So Scott, what have you done in the last couple days?
Besides seeing Avengers, which I won't go into, but yeah, I didn't think I was going to make tonight, but I just got back just in time. So let's see. So I've been working on, I did a video for a tour poster design I did for Alex Clark, who's a pretty big YouTuber. So that went up today. I've been working on some pen design, some enamel pen designs. I'm also working on a studio tour of the Underground Lair. That should be coming out pretty soon. I've been working on some consulting contracts for a couple possible job opportunities and freelance work, and then of course the 100 Days of Main Comics anthology cover I've been working on. So
cool. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm super excited for the reveal of that cover. I think it's gonna be.
I'm showing little bits and pieces. I think you got a little bit there, but I'm not giving anything away. Yeah.
So Josh, how about you?
I've been busy. I finished cleanup on the page of Quarterly Stories, and then I did two designs for this client. So those are kind of sneak peeks, but I can't really say the client or what they're for. But they're like sailor stuff. So I've been working away at those and got those wrapped up. Although I have one little tiny revision to do tonight. And then I also did the thumbnails for the next page of Quarterly Stories. So, and then have a long night ahead of me. Yeah.
Yeah, those look cool. That's awesome.
Thanks.
I didn't do much that I can show. I've got this going on, which is just a quick illustration that I kind of knocked out, and then it kind of goes as part of a set. I finished another one of these a little while ago, and I wrote the script for the anthology Kickstarter video. I've got the boards on that pretty much knocked out, and I'm starting to kind of organize that. And so there's not a ton to show. There's just been some writing and some organization, things like that. So yeah, that's what I've got.
It's a lot. It's a lot of work, honestly, getting something like that together.
Yeah, and we've got a few people in the chats. So we've got Pepper and Squatchy. So how's it going, guys? So yeah, how about challenges, Scott?
Challenges. I think just these contracts that I'm working on, because like one of them is for a consulting job, which I haven't really done much of. But luckily, I went online and I just searched consulting contract, and there was this like pretty thorough contract. So I took that and I kind of reworked it a little bit, and kind of combined it with mine. I actually took some of the language out of it to put in my general agreement that I do. So, but that just took a lot of time yesterday putting all that stuff together. But now that it's done, then hopefully it'll be easier next time. But that was a pretty big thing. Let's see, just trying to get stuff done. I've got my I got the funds for the Kickstarter, so I've got to start, getting everything printed and everything. And then also I got a comic convention coming up next month. So a lot of stuff to do for that.
Cool. And Josh, how about you?
Sorry, I was on mute for a second there. I have a minor cold starting because Ben picked up another thing at school. So that of course is gradually traveling down like through the pipe. So that's a challenge. And then just juggling time. Like time is really difficult to find right now. I think it's kind of why we put off the art check last time. It's just been too many things, but well worth it. Like I played a rock show on Saturday. That was pretty fun. I'll hopefully upload like a little footage of that to Instagram whenever I find the time. Um, and then just got a lot of art done and stuff. But it's just hard, especially I'm taking a few freelance jobs too, and that's just it's just a lot of struggle to kind of try to continue making the personal project on top of all that stuff, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And little shout out from Squatchy to Scott. He just picked up your. He got the sketch and
Oh,
a
cool.
lot of swag. So
Yeah. I figure he deserves it. He's always helping us out and supporting us and everything. So I threw in some extras for him.
and that was a giveaway you did on your YouTube channel, right?
On Facebook, actually,
On
for
Facebook,
the kind of that's when I was sharing the zombie sketches.
Right. Cool.
For the Kickstarter promotion. So.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Awesome.
Let's see. Challenges for me. This is a weird one, and I don't know how to bring this up without. So I'll just say it. But we've found my daughter is close to or exceeding a genius level IQ. She's above 130, which is considered like superior intelligence. And so now like we've had to go to a bunch of meetings and figure out like whether she skips grades or goes into like an accelerated program. That's been really time consuming. And then just like I saw Avengers, which was long and awesome. And then just a lot of family stuff, a lot of just kind of other things. That class I'm teaching late is still doing stuff. So anyway, yeah, just kind of interesting stuff to gauge, because like we're trying to balance between like there's like mental intelligence, then there's emotional intelligence, and there's maturity level, and we're just not sure exactly where we want to go. But she has an opportunity to get into a class with a teacher that was chosen by National Geographic to go to Antarctica this year.
Oh, nice.
As like, like there's only like one teacher that they chose like worldwide to do that. So pretty cool opportunity, but lots of just conversations about what's best, because I don't want to be one of those people that's like, yeah, my kid's better than everybody else's kid, so let's ruin her, So, because, in a lot of ways she's average and below average, and depending on what you measure and how, and then above average in other areas. And so it's been a weird week.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a hard decision, because I know like we were, my daughter's not at genius level, but she's definitely, the higher end of that spectrum. But she, right. She had an opportunity to, skip 8th grade, and, it was a tough decision. And in the end, we just decided not to. So, but.
Yeah. And I don't know if genius is a weird word, and it's a weird measurement or whatever, but I don't know that she's actually there, but she's above like every 130 and above or whatever.
Yeah.
So, and I don't even know where she's at. And I kind of don't want to know, and I definitely don't want her to know.
Yeah.
So did you decide, Scott, to advance her or not?
We decided not to.
Yeah.
I just thought that whole from a year, just because if it was like skipping 7th grade, then maybe, but the fact that it's like straight to high school, and so right. They're like, no, so we decided not to.
Yeah.
We thought about it, we considered it.
Yeah, and we were kind of not excited about it until we figured there's a program where it's not skipping a grade. It's still a 4th grade, but it's an accelerated 4th grade that's at the middle school instead of at the elementary school. So there's like 25 fourth graders in this middle school, and the rest of everybody else is fifth, sixth, and seventh. And so kind of an interesting situation because it's still technically not skipping a grade. Anyway,
Yeah.
I don't know. Weird stuff. So, but yeah,
Huh.
I don't know. Strange. So anyway,
Yeah, no, I get that. It's funny. We might have to deal with that next year because when Ben, my son's autistic, and he took his IEP at the end of the year, and we were told he had to stop reading at the fourth grade level because he got bored.
mm-hmm.
And they were like, when he goes into general ed, you should have him tested for GATE, like
Yeah.
for like accelerated classes. And there is a part of me that's like, that does struggle with that too, because it's like I do want him to succeed and stuff like that. But if it came to a decision like that, it is interesting what you have to weigh. Especially like I think earlier years not super bad, but like right smack dab in the middle there, that's a little tough.
Right. Yeah.
That's
And
a
I
lot
mean,
of slow development stuff.
so your son would be considered twice exceptional, which is a category. She said in this class, there's quite a few that are exceptional in two categories.
Yeah.
One being like like a higher intelligence level, and then exceptional for another reason. And so yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff, and it just seems, I don't know, it seems like schools are getting better and better at dealing with individual students more than just like masses of students. I just think for hundreds of years we've just failed
Yeah.
almost everybody. If you don't want to be an accountant or a scientist, we kind of just go, well, just get through it.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. So, but I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting. It'll be interesting. It's weird decisions that you have to make as a parent. But
Yeah.
so,
Gets really gray and hard to decide those kind of things.
yeah.
Man.
So anyway, sorry that took way longer than I planned. What are your plans, Scott?
So I gotta continue working on the cover for the anthology. Just I'm working on these pin designs and just like prepping, like I said, for like Kickstarter and the comic convention coming up. And also just to mention, I'm this Saturday is Free Comic Book Day, and May the 4th be with you. So I'll be at Surprise Comics again, and I think I've got all these old like Star Wars sketches that I drew, and they're just kind of collecting dust. So I think I'll bring those with me and maybe do some Star Wars commissions or something like that. So I'll be doing that this weekend.
Cool. How about you, Josh?
All right. Forgive my dogs. My wife's at a thing. She's going to be coming back soon. So my plans are to hopefully do the rough layout as well as the type for the next page of Quarterly Stories, and then other than that, my other plan is to get, let's see, oh yeah, the video done for. I need to get that thing recorded for our hundreds anthology video. And then I'd also like to get these pieces of art done for freelance and stuff like that. So that should take a while. So I think that'll be what all I've finished by the next check. Yeah.
Cool. And for me, I am kind of putting pause on the Kickstarter video while I'm waiting for everybody else to do those videos. I've got to do mine. Which shouldn't be that big a deal because there's no editing or anything when you cut those videos. And then I want to get a few more pages colored of my children's book, which I've fallen behind on. I was going to do quite a few of those. I started running in a weird direction color-wise, and I felt like the pages that I was coloring, I was getting them done quickly, but I didn't like where they were going. So I took a couple days off of that. So I'm going to get back into that. So. We'll kind of see where we go from there. Yeah.
Nice.
And
Nice.
Victor in the chat says, "Hey Scott, great poster on your video today." So
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm anxious to see what happens with that because the guy I did it for, he's a YouTuber. He's got 4 million subscribers, and I think he's gonna put out a video tomorrow and hopefully talk about the poster. So, and maybe a link. So I don't know what that will do to my channel, but that's another thing I guess I didn't mention that I was doing, but I kind of went through and kind of overhauled my channel a little bit, kind of did some more stuff on the playlist on the front page to see if I can, you know, try to capture some more. If people do check it out, try to, you know, get them to subscribe and everything. So we'll see what happens, but it should
Nice.
be interesting.
Cool. So, so what do you want to do for a topic tonight? Anybody in the chats have any suggestions while we kind of discuss different topic ideas? I know this would be terrible, but I kind of just want to talk about Endgame. Should we just do
Yeah, I don't know
big
because
spoiler warning, or is it going to ruin it for the people that come late and miss the spoiler warning? We should wait.
yeah, I don't know. I kind of feel bad about that just because I don't know. I know I was trying to avoid spoilers,
All right, we'll wait.
so
We'll wait. No Endgame
but
tonight. No Endgame. Just go see it. I'll say
yeah,
this. This is my non-spoilery review. The last hour of that movie is the most comic booky thing I've ever seen on the screen, and I
yeah,
mean that in the best possible way. It is what happened in my mind as a kid when I read comic books, just on the screen. There's just no difference. It was just as amazing. So, Squatchy's suggesting website building as a topic. That might be an interesting one.
okay,
Websites for illustrators and
okay,
cartoonists and stuff.
yeah, or just yeah. Okay, and because Josh is talking about wanting to do his website and everything, so that's a pretty good
Okay,
thing.
Josh, you cool with that?
Yeah, I'm definitely interested.
Okay, I'll kick it off. Today's topic is websites for artists. So a lot of what we do is on the internet and is visual media, and there have been a ton of changes over the last 10 years, and recently I feel like in the last year to 2 years, kind of in that. And so we wanted to kind of just go through a bunch of the options. I'll just give you kind of a rundown of my experience on the internet. I have had CoryKerr.com registered, I believe, since like 2001. And I have tried a ton of different things on there, from coding it by hand myself, which was, very poor and interesting back in the days of dial up, and to doing everything from Drupal to Joomla, which were like early kind of CMS. And when I say CMS, I mean like content management systems. And then there was like there was this old school Adobe platform that I can't remember what it was, like around 2005. And it was amazing because you could build something, and then you could hook it into this program and give your clients the option to like change things. And it was groundbreaking, because that was the thing about building websites that I hated so much. Is I like people say that, it's one of those situations where you build a website and you've just entered into a relationship, like a lifelong relationship, because you have to update it and all that stuff. And then I moved into WordPress, and WordPress was like this beacon of light amidst the darkness, because Joomla and all of those other platforms that allowed you to kind of code without coding, sort of, the CMS platforms, were so clunky and so horrible in so many different ways that I don't need to go into, that WordPress came out and it was amazing. And I was with WordPress probably from like probably 7 or 8 years. I did that, and then I finally got really sick of it because it became so popular and it didn't really update. It still felt like it was like amazing technology for 2006, but not like 2016, And so recently I actually switched to Squarespace after vetting a bunch of those things, and now I'm absolutely in love in that platform. But anyway, so we can talk platforms, or we can talk like organization or whatever. I think it'd be really interesting to get both of your opinions on what should go on an artist's website and why, and we can kind of tackle that as well. But how do you guys want to take this thing?
Yeah. Well, one thing I wanted to say real quickly, because I had a WordPress site for a little while too, and one of the main reasons why I switched, and I think probably one of the main reasons you switched as well, was because of the viruses. And if you get a virus on WordPress, then you basically have to pay to have it removed.
Yeah, which I didn't do, and it took days. I removed that stupid virus 3 times, and then after a couple weeks, it would come back. And finally, the 3rd time, I was like, I've literally wasted like 9 full working days trying to just rid myself of this so that I didn't have to pay somebody else to do it. Because you get zero guarantees from the people that you pay. They're just like, we'll get rid of it, but we can't promise that it'll come back, that it won't come back.
Yeah.
And I think that's just true of anything along those lines. Squatchy's asking if we've had any experience with GoDaddy. I'm gonna choose to not call out negative things about specific platforms.
Okay. Yeah. I don't host through GoDaddy, but I got a lot of my domains through them, and I think my email might be through them, but I haven't really had any problems.
Yeah. Everybody's got some issues, and
Yeah.
they're not my favorite. But
Yeah, I mean they're my current host, but but that'll probably tie into when I get into what I'm thinking of for the future of my site. So
yeah. So yeah, Josh, what are some of the variables that you're weighing in your decision right now? Because you're kind of in the midst of this process of trying to decide. We've got people in the chat saying, Squatchy's saying he has his website through GoDaddy. Victor's saying that he's debating between Wix and Squarespace. Lots of people are on WordPress, and there is a lot of good things to say about each of these platforms. And so, what are some of the variables and some of the deciding factors that you're weighing as you kind of make this decision?
yeah, I mean, so when I built the site that I currently have at joshuakemble.com, it was kind of just using WordPress and out of necessity, because up until then I had pretty much used primarily Dreamweaver. And then prior to Dreamweaver, I used this like short-lived Mac web building tool that I don't even remember the name of. I think it was called iWeb. They had their own host and stuff, and it was much more similar to what things are becoming again, where there weren't a lot of options. It was just kind of like very limited in what you could do, and you just kind of design the elements that plugged into different areas well, and then kind of make it work. And then Dreamweaver was kind of like free and cool and kind of easy to edit and change, but the hosting capabilities and what people were kind of expecting, especially with like searchability and shareability, it's just not the best program for that, especially for like search engine optimization and stuff like that. So
yeah, and the back end coding of that, it's super bloated code.
oh yeah.
Yeah, and so so if you don't know, Dreamweaver is if it's a piece of software that comes with Creative Cloud, where you can basically write your own HTML and CSS, and it's as if you're building the website from scratch, and it's got some interesting and good features to it, and it's kind of a visual way of doing that, but it is not optimized in any way, shape, or form, and it was great for its time, but nowadays, I feel like if you're not using a content management system, you're missing out on a ton of functionality and time saving as well.
For sure. And so that's why I switched over to WordPress, and WordPress was just amazing once I got the hang of it. It took a little bit of time to kind of figure out, but once you get in the flow of it, it's great. But the problem that I have with WordPress and have had with WordPress for a while now, and it's probably because I just don't know it well enough, is the ability to do galleries in WordPress is so dependent on plugins. And then often those plugins are created by people who just drop off the face of the earth and don't update. And then you have all these exploitabilities on your website, and then you get a lot of malware.
Yeah.
So it's
So
like,
let's talk about
yeah,
that for a minute so that everybody understands. So with a content management system, you're looking at two options. One option is uh, you have the files because everything is based on files, right? So I'm going to be really basic just for those that don't understand what's going on. The internet, basically the way that it works is you have a web browser and it is able to access these hard drives, and these hard drives are on servers. And those servers just broadcast a location of files. And those files can be images, they can be HTML files and CSS files and other types of files. It's basically just the coding language. It actually exists as a file sitting somewhere on a hard drive that's accessible by a web browser. And so I can go and get an HTML file and 3 image files and a text file and then a CSS file, and I would just put that on a server. And if I had a domain that pointed to that, that becomes a web page. Where you get a CMS, what that does is that takes those things and it builds a template around that. And so you have the CMS that has the engine, and then there's this template that's kind of on top of it. And so it's kind of like the CMS basic itself is kind of the skeleton and the muscles of it, right? And then the template is the skin, right? It's what everybody sees. So you kind of like skin it with this template. The cool thing about templates is that, if you change something on a template, it changes it globally across the site. So if I've got hundreds of pages on a normal website or what Web 1.10, Web 1.0 website, I would have to go change that thing on hundreds of pages. You're going to miss it. Whereas on a template, if I'm like, I want all my headers to be this font now, it automatically changes everything for you. And
yeah,
then, kind of like cybernetics, if I was gonna like add a third arm or something, you have plugins, and plugins is what you were just mentioning, Josh, where I can go. Let's say that I go south of the border and I get like an aftermarket cybernetic eyeball, right? Uh, I can do that, and it has a lot of functionality that doesn't come with like the basic skeletal structure and skin. But then sometimes, like you said, it can cause serious problems. And there's problems that show up in two different ways. One problem is that sometimes they build that and then they're done, and it becomes really
yeah,
vulnerable because it actually alters the base code. So it'll go in and change the CMS itself or add things on top of the CMS itself, and then you can have conflicting plugins. And so I could have one plugin that does something with the gallery, another plugin that does something with my links or the way the images do something or whatever. And those two things were built by different developers. They conflict with each other.
yeah,
So yeah, both of those can be kind of problematic. And what Scott was bringing up is one of the huge problems with the way that CMSs have developed, is specifically WordPress, which is awesome, but also because it is the most popular CMS out there, it's also the most targeted and the most exploited. And it just opens you up because all of those files are housed on some hard drive that you are renting. The other
yeah,
type of CMS is something like a Wix or a Squarespace, where I host no files. I don't have
yeah,
hosting with Squarespace, because what I'm doing is it's software as a service, and so they maintain all of the files themselves, and then based on that, if something happens, it happens to every Squarespace site in the world, and so they're going to fix it fast instead of go to what Scott and I had to deal with, which is, well, you can pay us to fix it or you can fix it yourself.
yeah, and that's kind of what I'm dealing with too. So I've had quite a few moments of like that kind of creeping onto my site and having to pay ridiculous amounts of money just to like keep my site clean. And it is getting to the point where either A, I've got to, like, because I've been like managing websites for the place I work, and we use WordPress for that. But like it's, we do everything you should do to kind of keep it updated. But my site sat dormant for like, 5 years or 6 years, 7 years maybe. And so it in order for me to even change the skin, it's been so many iterations where now it will not affect, like a lot of the time if you change templates, it's just a little bit of customization to get back to where you were. But in this case, the template that I was using is so outdated that to refresh to a new template will be a complete rebuild anyway.
Right.
And so that's where I'm like, well, I'm paying this much to have like malware protection and all this nonsense. And like I see the monthly fee of like a Squarespace. And then I'm like, I also have never been a fan of like, I never got into this to do coding or do math or like have to go on servers and have to go on it, like share like FTP sites and like do all these steps like in order to kind of make things work. And so for me, the appeal of Squarespace is kind of like, it seems like the type of thing that I wanted when I first got into building a website for my portfolio, where I was like, I just want a page that's going to show the work. And like the complexity of it though is for web comics, that's going to be an interesting thing to try to figure out. And you mentioned the idea of like possibly using the blog functionality for it, but I still don't know about that shortcutting in such a convenient way as it does for like Comics Press. And that's the part that's a little tough, is like to kind of figure out how to build that in. The second I kind of figure out what direction I want to go with that, I think, it's not. And the other thing is that's extra cost too, because when you do pay for a host, often, you can host multiple sites
right
on the same, server. And so it's like, it's kind of a bit more because I'd be hosting two sites through Squarespace, but it still kind of evens out to where it's not that much for like the fact that it wouldn't be as vulnerable and as much of a pain in the butt to update. And I like the gallery. I like the galleries they have built in with most of their templates. They're really cool. Your guys' sites look so good and are adaptable, which is great. So they can work on like Android, iOS, like on an iPad, on an iPhone. That's great. So I'm kind of leaning in that direction. But
Pepper,
the comic.
Sorry, go ahead.
For me, the comics thing is the one thing I'm like really curious about kind of figuring out,
Yeah, and I think it's really important, to kind of understand like what are the pros and cons, because you bring up some really good points. I mean, there are people that have built entire systems for webcomics that work really well for WordPress and completely for that. Pepper is saying they've got 3 servers at his house, and his husband optimizes everything and use WordPress and codes and updates our WordPress site. And I've got buddies that are super smart like that and can run and do that and super enjoy it and everything. And there's like this whole system, and they, like really like that. And if you are, I will say this, if you are into coding and tinkering and maintaining stuff, I think something, a software as a service like a Wix or a Squarespace or something like that is the wrong way to go, because you do not have root control of anything. And so it really depends on what you want to do, because there is and that's one of the huge downsides to something like Squarespace is there's a giant limit. You know what I mean? It's just a giant limit. But for me, I'm kind of like what you were talking about at first, Josh, where I really just want a simple way that I don't have to think about much to just show the stuff that I'm making. To just be like, here it is. I wanted to put it up and I'm done. And I don't have to think about, what version I'm on and updating it and whether or not, what tier, I'm on, or if I'm going to start sounding really like a novice because I don't know what I'm talking about. But like, what type of JavaScript, I'm running, or if I've updated the database or whatever lately. And,
Yeah.
there's like all kinds of stuff where I can like throw terms around that I've heard and I don't quite understand, like Ruby on Rails and Apache and, this guy and that guy. There's all this stuff. And I'm like, I kind of understand what all that stuff does, but I don't really have the desire to really dive into that because I've got other things that I want to dive into. But I know people that really enjoy that, and they can make that site do anything they want. Like I've got a buddy who's like, I wish it would do this. And he goes, oh yeah, give me a few hours. And then all of a sudden he like builds a thing that makes it do this. And to me, that just seems like magic. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
it's definitely its own kind of art form, and it is one of those things. I think we've talked about this before of like picking battles, where it's like, do you want your battle to be the portfolio itself, or like, do you want to do a lot of web work? Like, for instance, if you want to get hired to create websites, not graphics for websites, but actual like the skeleton of the website, like you probably would not do well to do a Squarespace site.
right.
Because the places you might be applying to probably, would have built those sites, so like those templates that Squarespace is using. So it is one of those things of like picking your battles of like, what do you want to get hired for? Like for me, I don't have a large interest in doing web design for a living. And I think it's really lucrative, and it's a whole area of design that I have friends in, and like, man, it's a pretty good gig, because if you get some stable clients and you're getting paid for every single website update, I mean, that's money that adds up, and that creates these long-term great client designer relationships. So it's like, it's not bad. I don't knock it, but I don't have interest in it, like
Yeah.
at least right now in my career.
Yeah. So Josh, Scott, when you were switching from WordPress to Squarespace, you've mentioned in the past that one of the things that caused you some issues. I don't want to say that you did wrong, but that caused you some issues was you designed what you wanted the site to look like prior to switching over.
Right.
I'm curious, if you were to do that again from scratch, would you do that process differently, the switching from one to the other?
Yeah, I would have. Assuming I went to Squarespace, I would have found the template that I wanted and built it based on that template. See, I kind of had the same history with web design, pretty much as some of you guys. I never learned code pretty much at all. I mean, there are a couple of things like I would look online. I could cut and paste some stuff in, and that was about the extent of it.
Right.
But so I was using a front page, I think, for a while. Then I started using Dreamweaver. But in those, the way I was doing that is that I could design something, I could kind of splice it and just kind of throw up the graphics and kind of get it to work. And then later, I had jobs where I was doing web design and I would just design it, and then I would just slice it all up and send it to somebody else, and then they would code it all out and it would work. So I don't know, I was just figuring that that's kind of how Squarespace would be, with that I could design it and then I could just, I'll just take this header that I designed and just drag it over here. And it doesn't quite work like that. You're really kind of dependent on whatever template you use. Now you had mentioned that kind of if you're a coder and everything, that you probably don't want to go with like a Squarespace, which I agree with, but I think there is a way to go in and kind of alter some of the templates if you're good at code. So there is more you can do with that. And like I have to talk to, we had Robert Johnson on, and he had Johnston, and he had mentioned that he might be able to help with some of that stuff. So one of the big problems I have with my template is it just got this massive padding on everything, and I don't want that much space around all my stuff, and I had showed it to some people and I got some feedback and everything. And that was one of the things that, oh yeah, you got too much space here. It's just too much scrolling, especially on mobile. But there was, that's all I can do. That's because it's just got this built-in padding for whatever reason. But it all depends on whatever template you pick out. But eventually I got it. I did find something, and I kind of battled with it for a while. It took me a couple weeks, and it's not, I would say Squarespace, at least for me, wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. But I kind of messed around with it for a while, and then and it took me a while to figure out things weren't doing what I wanted them to do. But eventually I some of it was just roundabout things that probably aren't the way I'm supposed to do it. Like for backgrounds, I'm kind of using a different way. I don't know, it's hard to explain, but because you can have graphics, but graphics only fill a certain amount, and then the backgrounds can fill other spaces, and I don't know how to explain it, but it's just I found a way to kind of make it do sort of what I wanted it to do. But I think if I have somebody that can go in and kind of tweak that code or whatever, I think I can get it pretty much exactly what I wanted. But it just took a couple weeks, me playing around with it to get a feel for it. And now that I've done that, I really like Squarespace a lot. So, but it's not as intuitive as I think they might make you think it is. Especially maybe, and it could be just coming, but we're all artists here, so coming to it as a designer, as an artist. I mean, if you want to just kind of follow the template exactly, and just kind of put some basic stuff up. But I was trying to do some stuff that it wasn't really built for,
Right.
and I kind of find out how to do it, like I said, in sort of a roundabout way. But
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think you're right. Okay. So I want to talk about two things real quick. One thing real quick, and then one thing for a long time, because I think it'll be pretty interesting. Pluses and minuses, like 30 seconds of the different platforms. So WordPress, huge plus, totally customizable, solid on a base level, used by almost everyone. Tons of plugins to kind of make it do whatever you want. And if you're hosting it, either like Pepper does, where you do it in your house, or like I did, where you're paying somebody else's host, you have FTP access. You've got your own email. So I used to have like me@corykerr.com, and that type of thing. You can host, like Josh said, multiple different domains in the same hosting thing. So I used to have my webcomic, and I ran about 10 different web pages, and you don't get that in a lot of other platforms. And so that's good that way. Pluses and minuses for stuff like Wix and Squarespace and other things where you're not hosting it is one. It's like one-time fee rather than a bunch of different fees where you're paying for hosting and storage and all that jazz, and the domain and whatever else. But with Wix and Squarespace and that stuff, you just pay them. They deal with the rest of it. But it is much more limiting in that I don't have my own email address anymore, because I don't want to pay the extra fee. Like there's a lot of stuff that's just like an upgrade or an add-on or an upsell, like that. But I find it, once you kind of figure out how it works, significantly easier. I'm never going to have to deal with the viruses. I'm never going to have to deal with brute force attacks. And the ease of not having to deal with like transferring files via FTP and going out and scrubbing things clean and upgrading stuff and maintaining database tables and cleaning PHP scripts when stuff gets clogged, and I don't have to do any of that. So there's kind of pluses and minuses to both. And there's a big trade-off, like with what Josh is saying, that like I don't know if it works with you kind of have to make it do something that it's not necessarily intended to do, and you don't have the option for plugins. So there's probably a way to do it, but it's not like necessarily a native way that they've intended. Kind of like Scott was saying, like they might not have thought about illustrators, because like you go on there's no like illustrators. There's templates for photographers. There's templates for restaurants. There's templates for e-commerce stores or whatever. But there's not like, here's your webcomic creator template. So there's some stuff like that. Maybe that's coming, or whatever. So those are some pluses and minuses. I wanted to switch it over to what you guys think. So let's just leave it for a visual creative, whether that be photographer, illustrator, graphic designer, or whatever. What are some essential things that you think a website has to have or has to do to kind of serve its purpose?
There's a couple things that I think of right off the bat. Like first off, like your URL matters a lot. Don't make it impossible to type. Like it's it's better if it's just if you have a short name, use your name. If you have an incredibly long name, come up with a brand, and not a brand that's like cute fox girl at like if you're planning on especially getting work like in-house or anything like that, like you want to keep in mind that like people have to type this out sometimes, especially if they're looking at a resume and there's no link. um, and frankly, there have been people like when we've had positions open up at my job where their website was so hard to type, I gave it one try and then I was like, you know what, I don't have time, and I went on to the next resume. So it's like that's like number one. Just make sure whatever domain you're buying, like that it's a really memorable, easy to type name. Um, the other thing I'd say is like curate your portfolio. So like my site right now is actually not the best example, but ideally you would curate to where you take out all your weakest work. So show your best work. If you want a section that's like linking to a blog or like more current work, maybe make that its own section so that it doesn't interfere with the main portfolio. That's like the stuff that you're going to be showing people. That's like, this is why you should hire me, right? Um, and then think about function. Like, are you speaking to art directors or are you trying to build fans? If you're trying to do both, you might have to share a little more than you would with just like a standard portfolio site for an art director,
Yeah.
So yeah,
I'll agree with both of those. And as you're talking about like an easy to understand URL, a good example is FDOT. This guy is somebody that Scott and I met at Creative South, and I can't even remember his last name, but it was really long. And so instead of going with a really long last name, that is difficult to spell and remember, his last name starts with an F, and so he goes with this whole brand of EF dot, and his website is f.studio.com, which is really easy to remember because it's like, oh yeah, like I literally didn't bookmark this, I just thought of that as you
yeah,
were giving that example. It's
yeah,
like, yeah, there's a guy that's doing that. Um,
I just add like with mine, I could have put, I could have probably got, obviously scottserkland.com, because the thing is with my last name, if there's anyone with the last name Serkland, they're related to me and somehow it's just not a common last name. But so I was kind of debating, I remember on Twitter a while back, there's an artist that says, if you're not using your real name, you're doing it wrong or whatever.
yeah.
So and I was kind of like, well, is that true? Is that, I don't know. Because and I could see compared to like you said, like Sexy Cat Girl 5 or something weird like that. That's going to, it may sound cool at the time, but later on, it's just like, that's not going to do you any favors. So, I mean, the fact that I've been using Serkworks for so long and the fact that no one else is going to use that because it's like a made up word, but it is also part of my last name. So there's some of that kind of, I'm using my name, but it's a word that, that I can easily get. So every single one of my social media platforms, it's all Serkworks. I don't have to say, oh, follow me at Twitter, follow me on this other, handle on Facebook or whatever. It's all, I can just say at Serkworks, follow me wherever. So that makes it so sometimes a made up name, if it's and it's short too.
yeah,
The only thing is sometimes somebody might spell it wrong because if you think like a circle, you might try to spell it with a C. So sometimes I spell it for people, and sometimes because if they know my last name is Serk, Serk, well, Serkland, but if they say Serk from the Serkworks, sometimes they'll spell works the same way with an E.
Oh,
I think the only reason why I did an O was so I could use that. Originally, the gear was part of the logo was the O. So I don't know. There is some issues with spelling, but But for the most part, it's short, it's easy to spell, and I can get it on pretty much whatever social media I have.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and I
I'm
good example.
super jealous of your having the same social media handles on everything because I was dumb, and when I first got on the internet, uh, well, when I first got back on the internet because I was out of the country for a while, um, I just came up with a random name, Myth Idiot, which had nothing to do with anything, and still to this day I don't know what I meant by it or whatever. But I got everything in that, and then now I've got like CoryKerr.com, and then my Instagram is Cory R Kerr, and my YouTube channel is Cory Kerr Art, and my Twitter is Cory Kerr, and it's like it's just I don't know, it's just all over the place. So I just tell everybody just go to CoryKerr.com. You can find everything from there. But yeah, one thing I wanted to bring up that I think is really obvious, but should be stated for those that because I've had this discussion with students a lot, is they try to be really cute or creative with the site to the point where it obscures what they do, and I think you should know whatever this person does. Like if you land on my site, within 2 seconds, I ink on paper, I color digitally. Because those are the first two things that you see is here's a big giant wall of stuff. You can tell what my style is. There's no digging or clicking. Like you're just right there and you see it.
Yeah.
And I think that's super important. Like I hate it. If you're 2 or 3 clicks deep before I see any of your work or know what it is that you do or who you are, like it's too much work, and I'm kind of in the same position as Josh, where I'll hire people occasionally, and when I do that, and I'm looking through portfolios and I'm looking through online things, like I have so many pet peeves about websites where it's like, just show me what you do, especially if you're
Yeah.
applying for something visual. Like I should see that in like second one. Then tell me a bunch of other stuff later, or do cute things later, or whatever. But like, let me see the work first.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest critiques that I got when I showed it to Tom over at Design Cuts, who kind of is giving me some advice, was that it was a little unclear what I do. I mean, it says Mad Science Supply Company when you go on, but then it says comics. So that's a problem with me because I kind of do different things, even though I'm able to tie them all in if I can explain it. So I still have to that's one thing that I have to work on. Like, I think if you scroll down a little bit on mine, it says "Get Your Geek On," where where the mad scientists supply specialists offering retro futuristic, nerdy, sci-fi inspired prints, books, collectibles, novelties, and gift ideas. So I mean that kind of sums up what I do. So somehow I got to put that in. So that's one of the things I'm going to be working on. But one thing I just like to say, as far as something that's super crucial, is make it easy for people to contact you. A lot of people have these contact forms. I've got a contact form on there because it's just, I kind of just because on my contact page, I wanted something that will, kind of fill the page a little bit so it doesn't look like there's nothing there. But you don't have to fill out the form. Right under it, it's kind of says, it tells a little bit who I am, that, call me if you want this or that. And then right under that, it's got my email address and even my phone number. So make it easy for people to contact you. If you don't, I hate it when I go to a website and I'm trying to I just want to send somebody email and I got to fill out some form. And this is maybe some people don't have this same reaction that I do, but I hate that. I don't want to fill out a form. I just want to email somebody. So
Yeah.
just make it easy for people to contact you. Make it easy for people to find where else you are on social media. At the bottom of every single one of my pages, it's got all my social media links, and then it's clearly evident. You click on contact, you've got my email and even my voicemail right there. So
Yeah. That's good advice. Sweet. I would also say make sure your work is fairly easy to navigate and scroll through in probably a couple of ways. So one where you're showing thumbnails, one where people can click in, and one where they can kind of actually swipe through on their phone or like arrow through on their keyboard. But the point being, like, you want to make it as easy as possible for people to view your work and either spend time with it. So I wouldn't recommend having like an automatic scrolling thing. Like that always bugs me when and I'm not talking about the scroll that happens when you load a page. I'm talking about like the scroll that happens when you click on a thumbnail in somebody's portfolio and then it swipes past. And it's,
Carousel.
I'm an art director and I'm digging something, and then you chose to flip the page before I wanted to. You just lost valuable time. You know what I mean? Like, you want to allow people to like dwell with your work and swipe through it as quickly as possible or stay as long as possible. You know?
And along those
Yeah.
lines, with an art director, and I know that a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this, make it easy for people to download your images. Because I know a lot of art directors have organized folders on their desktop where they save images to different folders, and when they have work that matches a specific style or a specific artist, they go to their desktop and dig through their photos to find that person. And so if
Yep.
you've like disabled right clicking or disabled copying or something, you're shooting yourself in the foot with that. And I know a lot of people are going to say, but what about people stealing your work or whatever? There's easy ways to do that. So you're on the internet.
Yeah,
You know.
you're not going to stop it. If somebody wants to steal your work, you're not going to. If you can view it, you can steal it.
Yeah.
So don't worry about it. Just
Yeah, there's this.
you're probably losing. You might be losing more of a job opportunity, like Cory says, if an art director who does want to collect that, than you would be probably somebody taking your artwork and selling it.
Well, and actually, like the few times in my life that I've had moments of going totally viral online, it was all due to images that could be downloaded. Because what would happen is like a blog would download one of my images and then they'd post a blog about it. They'd link my info and spread it all over the internet. And that happened multiple times on threadless designs, like way back in the day, that got like, for that year you'd search my name and get like 200,000 results. That's not the same anymore. But at the time, like that wouldn't have even happened had I prevented people from being able to get my work. And then that's cool because then it's shareable and it's accessible and it gets everywhere, which is kind of where you want to be as an illustrator or a designer, because those were my busiest years, in freelance. Was like somebody would see some cool meme online and then be like, oh, this guy did it, I'll hire them. And like that's something you don't want to disable people from doing either. So yeah.
Yeah. So Victor has a couple of really great suggestions, and each one of these could be a little topic. And I'll just read his comment: bio, portfolio, contact info, online store, links. Make everything visual but easy to follow, and it should have a smooth flow.
Yep.
And I'd like to differentiate real quick. I'd like to differentiate between a portfolio and a blog. And one of the things that I think is really important, and this is being proven to me over and over and over again, and I realize that it's extra work and I realize that it's annoying, but the fact that so many people don't do it makes it that you really should do case studies, do write-ups on the bigger things that you're making. Show your process and talk about your process, and that does several things. One is that people will spend more time on your site. Then that's just good for a number of reasons. Two is when people become intimate with something in their knowledge of it, they're more endeared to it. And there are lots of examples of that where I've had people contact me and say, hey, I want you to do this for me because I really like the way that you think. We've never spoken before, and this is before I had hundreds of hours of me blabbering on YouTube. The reason that they know, or they think they know how I think, is because I've told them like how I think through designs, through creations, through illustrations. And that way it does several things. Instead of somebody who's uninformed, who's coming to me because they can't do what I can do, not being educated on the value that I'm actually bringing to the table, and they're just like, well, I just want a logo and they're simple and so blah, 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 blah. They are going to go through and they're going to be like, oh, wow, there's a lot of symbolism. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of iteration that goes into this. Like, this is a process. This is going, I can see the value that he's bringing to the table. I don't have to sell them on that because they've sold themselves in the selection process. Write-ups, I can literally talk about write-ups for hours and hours and hours, but those are the two main points. Is people become endeared to that because now they know intimate information about that, about you and your process and how you think through things and how you problem solve. And if you know something about something, you like that thing more. And I'll prove it. Ben Affleck's Daredevil. I love that movie, and I think I mainly love that movie because the director's commentary broke down with the cinematographer why they chose certain shot selections, why they chose certain color grading, shot by shot. That entire movie, I learned so much just from listening to that director's commentary that it made me love a movie that most people really dislike. I actually don't think it was that bad of a movie, but a lot of people hate that movie. But I know like intimate behind the scenes knowledge about it. And you want people to know that about why you drew that comic page that way, the decisions that you made, why you created the logo that way, why it animates the way that it does, why, because then what you're doing is you're actually arming a decision maker against those that might stop them. Because say there's an art director that really wants to use your work, and every art director has to fight a battle every time they spend any money. That's just like how it works. And so if they're like, let me tell you, this is this guy's work, but also let me tell you how this guy thinks and how he processes. I know that we're going to get, X, Y, and Z because this is how he does things, which is different than a lot of other people. And it might be exactly the same as a lot of other people, but they don't know that because they know that you do this. They're not sure that everybody else does because everybody else is just like doing this thing where they just say, I made a thing, bye. And then they bounce, right? And so that kind of like drive-by showcase really devalues a lot of the work, and your blog is an excellent opportunity to do these case studies.
Yeah, I'd agree.
So yeah, and then also the difference between a blog and a portfolio. I think a blog you can show more things, and a portfolio should be more curated. And if it makes it into your portfolio, then there's an understanding that this is polished, finished work. And if it's on your blog, it could be iterative. It could be unfinished. It could be work in progress. It could be just like experimental. And I think there's some understanding, that there's a difference between those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. Talk about store. You guys are way better at this than I am and more experienced. Talk about selling online real quick.
I could probably do a whole show just on this. But the one thing that I always tell people is that, try, if you're putting up your products, try to make it like look more like a physical thing. Because most people, if they're selling a print, people see that, it just looks like an image, any other image that you would share on, whatever, like Instagram or whatever. But so what I do is I'll have people holding the print, like a photo of somebody holding the print, some kind of mock-up with something around it, or have it in a frame. If like have it on, if it's a smaller print, have it on a desk in a frame or something, just so people can see that this is like an actual physical thing, and they can see, this. Look at how this is in this person's house. That would look good in my house, or something like that, or whatever it is. Show it as like a physical object. Like if you're going to, if you're selling vacuums, instead of just showing the vacuum, show somebody pushing the vacuum. Show somebody like actually what it actually does. If you're selling irons, show somebody actually ironing, and not just the iron. And you can show that too. The other thing is I do is I try to take advantage of any SEO opportunity that I have. So if they allow you to put up, and this will take some time, but if you, like when I first did it, I had all these different SKUs and it took me forever to put them up. But so Cory's got my thing up. If you click on any one of those things, you're probably going to find 3 or like probably 4 more images of that same product from either a different angle or on a different model or whatever. And what that does is that gives each one of those images is another way for a search engine to find it. And if they allow you to put however many keywords they allow you to put in all that stuff. So just any opportunity they give you, take advantage of that. So that's one thing I would say as far as the store goes. I don't know, you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's brilliant.
Okay. Trying to think what else as far as online store. Obviously description. I mean, I've written a lot of ad copies, so I try to get pretty clever. You also want not only you want to show why a person would like that, but also explain. I mean, you write some enticing copy like this would look great in here, or this is perfect for this, or and just if you have the ability to, if you're a good copywriter, do that. If not, maybe find somebody who is and have them kind of write a description of some of your products. I mean, that's a big thing too. The other thing that I would say, like, because I do print on demand through Printful, but to integrate that into Squarespace, which I didn't realize, there's a bunch of extra fees. So, and right now I don't know if it's totally worth it. Like I sell a lot of prints on my site, but I don't sell a lot of t-shirts. So I don't know if it's worth it for me to pay that extra money to have it go through Printful. And I've been watching some vlogs and stuff like this, some video stuff, of some really inexpensive like screen printing stuff. So I'm thinking maybe I'll just buy. I could probably the extra money I'm spending to have the deluxe package for Squarespace, because it's got some other features. I think the only feature I use is just to integrate the Printful. So I could go out and buy just the screen printing stuff and do a lot of this stuff at home. So, which I may do. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. But part of that's on me because I haven't really marketed the shirts as well as I can. Because in watching these videos about t-shirt companies, I mean, it's just a lot of these people have just these horrible designs, and they're making money because they're good at marketing, even though the designs are like garbage. And I'm like, how are you selling so many of these things when I've got, without being too,
I'll say it. Your stuff is awesome. You've got great designs.
So I've got great designs, and why can't I move these things? Because I am not marketing them properly. So, that would just give me a bigger edge if I was able to do the kind of marketing that some of these people do. So,
yeah, absolutely. So
Nice.
yeah, and I don't have a lot to add to that, other than I do talk in depth, and I won't do that here. You've got 2 options. You've got 3 options when you're selling stuff. One is you have inventory, right? When you have inventory, your margins are much higher. And a good thing to have inventory of is things that don't take up a lot of space, and in my opinion, that don't have different sizes. So like prints and things like that, stickers and stuff. It's great, right? I can produce those in mass. It's not like I'm going to run out of extra larges or whatever. And they don't necessarily cost me a ton, and the margin on that is awesome. The other option is you do print on demand. When you do print on demand, it's awesome because you don't have inventory. But your margins are significantly lower. And so the nice part about that is you make money on your first print on demand item. The downside of that is this is not that much money. And so like I might make, somewhere between $15, to $17 per shirt if I'm doing my own inventory, but my break-even point might be 70 shirts, or 30 shirts or 150 shirts, depending on the size of shirts. And so I don't actually make a cash flow positive dime until I sell a certain number of units. And on the flip side, I might make only $2 on a print on demand product, but I make that $2 on the first one that I sell. And so there's kind of some interesting things that you've got to play around with. I don't personally carry inventory of shirts because I don't move a lot of product, and I don't want to have a garage full of like extra smalls that I guessed wrong on, that I'm never going to move or whatever. But I do know people that they really started to move a lot of shirts, and for them it makes sense to have inventory because instead of making $2 a shirt, they're making $15 a shirt, and they're able to eat the inventory that they don't sell because they've already made a couple $1,000s in that run, or whatever. And so there are times based on volume where one or the other might make sense, but to your end consumer, there can be very little difference depending on how you do that. So that's kind of an interesting thing to think about when you're thinking about websites. That's probably a whole nother episode or topic, but
Yeah. Yeah, I
so
think we kind of touched on this quite a bit, you know?
yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's anything like huge that we've missed. I mean, I think we pretty much hit it. So
Yeah, I would just say, I would say I don't think there is a one right solution for everybody. And hopefully this has been helpful to help you kind of decide what works. For me, the ease of things is super important. For others, you know, the customizability and all that is really important, and being able to host and things like that. And to each their own. And if we were all the same, that would be a huge problem. And so the internet is configurable and customizable, and so you can kind of come at it from a number of different ways. But I would seriously consider why you're online, and this is something that seems really obvious until you say it out loud because a lot of people don't actually think about it. Consider the experience of your user. Who's your intended target audience? Like,
yeah,
and what do you want their experience to be? That should drive 100% of the decisions that you make on your website. Like for me, I want people who are going to pay me a lot of money for for illustration to come and see what I do. But for others, it might be that I'm trying to move product, or still others, it might be that I'm trying to, gain followers, or, whatever. And there are a lot of different situations and a lot of different things that you're trying to do. Maybe you're trying to book weddings. That site looks and feels significantly different than something like my site, right? And so consider what it is that people want when they come to your site and what you want them to know. That should drive 100% of what you're doing online.
yeah, and that I think a good sum of that too is just like a basic question. One of the first questions of graphic design, which is, what are you trying to say? And if you can answer that, you've got a really good pathway and at least a good direction for like where you're going to head for your design.
Yeah, what are you trying to say and to whom? And if you don't
Mhm.
know those two things, it's not design, it's something else.
Exactly.
Squatchy, this is a great way to wrap this up. Squatchy asks, the top place for a website vote is? Scott, what's your top vote for today?
What on who to go with for a website
Yeah.
for hosting?
Uh-huh. Or anything, yeah.
I, yeah, I mean, I haven't used everything, so I don't know. I am pretty happy with Squarespace, and there's some different price tiers. The only thing like that I realized when I started Squarespace is that every extra little feature, I mean, I had to kind of upgrade, so I ended up now I'm paying like the topmost tier, but that's mostly because of the printful stuff, which most people aren't going to need. But there are some, pretty reasonable, tiers on Squarespace. So my recommend is Squarespace. I do enjoy it. There's some other ones like a lot of people use, especially if you're using e-commerce, Shopify. I keep hearing Shopify all the time.
Yeah.
But I don't really know much about it. But a lot of people talk about it, so maybe that's an option.
And I know Adobe just bought Magento, which used to be a giant in e-commerce space, that unless you're doing B2B, you probably were not aware of it, but it runs a significant portion of everything. So I think you're going to be seeing something like that come out. If I'm going quickly, my vote would also be Spotify. Sorry,
Spotify.
now that you said Shopify, would be Squarespace.
Place to host your music.
Yeah, this is why we should wrap up. My brain is going, but yeah, for my money and time, Squarespace is awesome. I kind of balanced it between Wix and Squarespace because I wanted to get away from WordPress. And Squarespace did what I wanted to do more than Wix did. And you can look at my site and see, and if you want your site to do what mine does, I'm at the lowest tier. It's just super basic functionality. I don't have any API hooks into in a Printful or anything like that, and so anything that mine does, yours could do on the lowest tier. What are you thinking, Josh? I know that you haven't quite made a decision, but
I'm pretty into the idea of Squarespace, but I'm still, there are things I really love about WordPress, and so it's one of those things where I need to kind of bite the bullet one way or the other. The one thing I was going to ask, it just works pretty much the same with like transferring a URL, like redirecting it for them as it would with like a regular host.
what do you mean for redirecting it? Are you talking about permanent redirect, or are you talking about like temporarily?
Like permanently redirecting your URL.
Yeah, so if you're switching from something to Squarespace, they have systems that are set up. I will say that I was super disappointed. They claim that you can transfer all of your information over, and I had a year's worth of blogs and everything, and the transfer was terrible. It didn't work. I basically had to just scrap my blogs. It brought the text over, and like I had short code and stuff like that, and so it didn't work. But the domain itself is, you're basically going to go to your host and tell your host that you want the DNS to point to something else.
Yeah.
They'll give you a little code. You go on Squarespace, you punch in the little code. There's a few steps that you do, and then it goes. It'll take you about an hour, maybe less. But once you do it, it's done, and it's not. It's a little bit of a hassle and some hoops to jump through, but that's mainly getting your hosting to let go of it. On the Squarespace side, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting because like one thing I'm also thinking of is possibly just building a beta on like a dead URL, like to a dead link basically, and then like connecting the domain to it.
So
Wow.
with Squarespace, when you sign up for a free trial,
Mhm.
um, they will actually give you a mirrored site, and then you can turn on the domain after you've built it, so that it's kind of a seamless transition.
Nice. It's cool. I'm
Yeah,
kind of excited. I might have to mess with that.
yeah.
All right.
So all
Cool.
right. So if you want to see Scott's stuff, I've been showing it throughout this episode. Just go to serkworks.com, and that's SERKWORKS.com. You can see a lot of the stuff that can happen on the higher end of Squarespace. If you want to check out my stuff, you can go to CoryKerr.com, and you can see a lot of the stuff that can happen on the lower end of Squarespace. And if you want to check out Josh's stuff, you can go to quarterlystories.com, and you can see the kind of WordPress plugins and templates that will make a webcomic function, and some of the functionality that works with that. We were able to navigate through pages sequentially and things like that. And as always, if you want to check out this podcast, go to corykerr.com/48hr, and we'll see you guys in a couple days.
Bye.